Do most people have what it takes to start a business at zero and get it to $1 million in revenue? Everybody lacks like the tactical skills when they're starting because they've never done it. But I actually think what sets people up for failure is when they lack the emotional or behavioral skills. Dealing with stress, managing yourself, managing your state, managing your actions and reactions to how you're feeling. The people who I see succeed quickly are the ones who already have like the emotional discipline. When an emotion arises, their reaction to it is actually unproductive and sets them back, versus the people that have the emotional skills, their reaction to the event or to the emotion is productive and it propels them forward. Being a wantrepreneur, like what that looks like is a lot of the times you're unaware that you're in this overthinking, overanalyzing phase. It's normal because our brain is fearful of the unknown. And so it's like the thought of starting a business is so scary. It's like gotta be this huge, hard, awful thing. And the longer we prolong not starting the business, the bigger this like monster, I like to say, behind the closed door becomes. Because our brain is taught that if we avoid something, it is big and scary. And so the longer you avoid it, the bigger and scarier it gets. You're letting fear dictate your thoughts and your feelings, because typically people that are like a wantrepreneur, it's like they go to all these conferences, they read all these books, and they like take all these podcasts, and they feel like they're constantly learning, so they get this like dopamine hit, but then they do nothing with it. A lot of people say, I'm just learning right now, but there's no evidence you've learned anything until you put it into action. I think that in the wantrepreneur phase, like I'll just say this, like, and a lot of people probably don't agree, but I think that you should actually just cut off consumption. You are so far in this direction, you have no bias to action, that we need to, like, inertia goes in whatever way you want to go. You have all this inertia and all this momentum in the way of consuming and not doing anything. You need to move it in the opposite direction to get to where you want to go. Right now, you're so heavily weighted in terms of overthinking and overconsuming. You're like, well, I don't know what to do at this point. It's like, geez, use common sense. I don't know. There are so many things that if you just let yourself sit for 5 minutes in silence, that you can actually think through and come to your own organic answer. Most of the time, business is common sense, but people don't take the time to think. When you get to the second phase, which is like a starter, which is conscious incompetence, that's really when you're able to take the first step. So you're not like being dictated by fear anymore. And you're able to actually apply knowledge that you learned. You are aware of the fact that you have no idea what you're doing. That is when most of the time people start looking for help. They start looking for guidance because they realize like, okay, I've now taken this step. I'm now in it. I'm committed. I have no clue what I need to do next. You've built the LLC, you've maybe got like a few people from like your network that are your customers, but like you haven't figured out how to market, you haven't figured out how to sell, and you're not consistent with anything. The reason that most people give up at this stage is it's just the fear of the unknown. It's like you're just very uncomfortable, and a lot of people can't push through that discomfort to get to the side where you actually know what to do and you actually have a little bit of traction. If this is your first business, you've never done this before, and you don't know what's going on, of course you're scared and uncomfortable. Like if we could just accept that that is part of the journey, like feeling that way is the cost of the success you're gonna have in the future. I think that in the starter phase is probably the best time to explore finding a mentor. I'm hesitant to say like, find a mentor and you must have a mentor. I don't believe that to be true. I think that you have to find a source of information that can help guide you, then that would be extremely helpful. The most successful mentor-mentee relationships that I've ever had have been where that person has the same values as me. I would look for somebody who has not just the skills that I need at the time, but they have the values. Because what I'll tell you is that if they have different values than you, then they will use different skills to accomplish the goal. And they might be skills and they might be tactics that you might not like and you might not jive with. And so it makes more sense to make sure that you're aligned on both fronts than it is to look for just the skills and that alone. Try to find somebody who has industry or niche knowledge, and you don't need strategic guidance at this point. You need tactical knowledge. And so it makes more sense to find a mentor who, even if they're not at like the absolute level that you'd like to get to, they have the tactics that you need at the level you're at right now. The next phase, which is the producer phase, it's when you've been able to produce results. Now they're not consistent, reliable results, but you're able to produce some results. So you've gotten enough clarity that you've taken action and moved forward, and you started selling something to somebody on some channel. One day you're like, the business is amazing. And the next day you're like, this business fucking blows and I hate this, I'm gonna blow my brains out. People get stuck here when they're in that like valley, I would say, like valley of despair or valley of shit. And then they feel like because they're there, they should go do something else. They should stop, they should pursue something else. When the reality is like, that's when you wanna double down, because eventually, once you get through this, it just kind of goes like this, like huge, and then it gets smaller and smaller, and then you finally grow. I know when I was in this phase, it was like I was making sales, but it wasn't consistent week over week. I had no trends, no reliable data, and I wasn't sure if I was like awesome or completely sucked. It was like every other day, it was like a switch in terms of what I thought of myself. Most people get stuck at the producer phase, literally just because they lack consistency, doing the same things day in, day out to produce a consistent result. So that's why it goes up and down. It's not like It's some volatile, unknown thing. It's that you are volatile. And therefore, everything in the business is as well, because you're not consistent in terms of your discipline to adhere to an action that will produce a winning result. And then when you get to master, which is unconscious competence, you do not need to think about what you're doing, and you will do it well. So this is like somebody who's a weightlifter and say they've been in the gym for years, and they go to deadlift, and without thinking about what their form needs to look like and how they grab the bar, they just do it. The same goes for business. So once you get to that level where you are a master, the way that you get leads, the way that you build your marketing messaging, the way you write copy, the way you sell, the way that you talk to customers, you're doing it without even thinking about it. Therefore, it takes less effort. You're finally in flow, you have something that's working, you feel good about it, and it doesn't take nearly as much effort as it took in the beginning. If you're not self-aware and you're like, I don't know what level I'm at in this hierarchy, ask your employees, ask some of your best clients, ask your friends, ask your family. When we're not aware of something that we're doing, the best thing that we can do is ask for outside opinion. A stage of master is really mastering the size business you currently have. It's not that you have mastered business itself. And so you have mastered 0 to 1. Now what it takes to go from 1 to 10 and 10 to 30 and 30 to 50 and 50 to 100 are completely different skill sets. The next theme, in my opinion, is like team. It was all about you and your product, and now it has to transition to be all about like you and your team.